Well, hello again from Peru. This time the road is taking us to the national park called Manu, and we're hoping to get to a place called Salvacion and hopefully visit a small village in the jungle called Shintuya. First stop in the middle of a pretty difficult 200-kilometer ride was a town called Paokartambo. It is quite a pretty town where the asphalt road ends and you get to drive about 100 plus kilometers on pretty rough trocha, they call it. Commonly known as dirt roads. Well, Paokartambo is pretty, very nice, quaint streets, and probably last yummy meal there. About an hour from Paokartambo, the climate changes and you start getting drizzly rain and fog, and the road, you can't see here in the video, but the road gets quite slippery and dangerous. Landscape, just like the weather, changes extremely rapidly, and fairly shortly after crossing ridge, the road takes you down to the green, wet jungle. At times it gets really wet. The abundance of small springs along the road create these spots with a lot of mud and water, and one is really thankful to be riding in the company of another motorcycle rider, because we kept lifting each other quite often. Even though it was pretty stressful, but I think my highlight of the ride was to watch the two dogs on the second motorcycle, their ears flying in the wind. It was quite entertaining. Brave dogs to go through all of this. Well, about 6 hours fighting the weather elements, the slippery road and mud and rain and hail and all kinds of things. We finally made it to our destination, Salvacion, where we had another fight, saving our food from the birds. Well, I'm actually living the entire clip here, even though it's long. But to watch this bird with such resilience fighting for its food, I mean, I haven't seen things like this, even on fun YouTube videos. The hostel we stayed at is actually a rescue center for birds in trouble. So a lot of these guys have lived here for a long time or grown up here, and I think they feel like they are the boss. Well, after the fight, the next day, the weather was absolutely fantastic, and we decided to go further towards a village called Shintuya. And that road, of course, brought with it quite interesting experiences, like crossing multiple rivers, and it was pretty tough. I mean, for me, this trip with river crossings and going down tough roads, crossing streams and fighting with round, slippery river rock, it was the first time in my motorcycling career, so I had a little bit of a tough time, even though everything on the end went well. But big motorcycle and unknown terrain, oof, especially when my companions decided to drop their smaller motorcycle with two dogs into the river. I was like, oh, what's gonna happen to me? But all went well. And frankly, there were not many options. You either ride or you turn around and cry, so I just kept on riding. Oh my god.
Madre De Dios.
Oh, Madre De Dios.
Well, high levels of adrenaline for sure, and we kept moving on towards the river called Madre De Dios, towards our destination. Well, to be frank, it was a great experience. I mean, I'm riding this motorcycle for about only a year and a half, and it's the first big motorcycle I ever rode in my about 3 or 4 year career of riding two-wheelers. I never had training on intricacies of riding bigger motorcycles before. I mostly only heard advice about roads such as these from my partner who was not with me on this trip, so remembering things like when you get into tough spots, just goose it was kind of hard, and the first couple of times I was really scared to do it. Just press the accelerator, but with time and slowly, I guess, after second, third, fourth, fifth river, it kind of dawned on me that motorcycle is much more stable at a higher speed than going slowly through these rough spots. So it was a great learning experience as well. Thankfully, we also went during the dry season, so most of those rivers were fairly dry, not very, very full of water, so the learning was made a little bit easier. But all ended well. Everyone arrived in Shintuya in one piece, albeit probably with a number of extra gray hair after a ride like this. But the weather was wonderful, the mood was excellent, and we were all happy.
Well, I guess I'll tell a little story, or we can all tell a little story. We drove about 40 kilometers today to a place called Shintuya. So we did have to cross 5 rivers, or maybe 5.5 or 6, I'm not sure. That was a lot of fun.
I fell in 2 of them.
Well, Chris kind of gently laid down his bike, but it was kind of fun. So now we're walking bikes in somebody's house, literally behind the coffee bushes, and we're hoping that tomorrow we're gonna find them there. And now we're walking towards the boat to that what would take us to kind of like an islandy place across the river with hot springs and other fun stuff, and we're just gonna stay there the night or more.
We finally got a hold of Walter, whose house our motorcycles were left in, and he was also the master of this interesting and very unstable boat that for that short 45-minute ride housed all of our belongings and quite a lot of precious equipment. I mean, every time that boat careened to one side or the other, I guess my heart skipped a bit because the river was about 7 to 8 meters deep, but it was just very beautiful. He took us to a jungle hotel with hot springs owned by his family.
Каждый раз, когда она это делает, мне страшно, чтобы со всем нашим скарбом вот залезет. На этой лодочке мы приехали на наш островок. А тут прямо вот водичка. Вон там даже видно. Пар поднимается. То есть это горячие источники здесь.
Well, I'm laughing, of course, calling this place a resort on the other side of the river. It's a very nice little place. Basic amenities. We had all we need, even though we didn't really have light the night before. But hey,
Living quarters where we stayed the night. Let's see how it is inside. Each room has the little bathroom.
well, we kind of dropped in on the owner of this place quite suddenly, without any prior warning. There was no tourism for many months, so everything was stored away in different places. We even had to open up one of the rooms to get the gas. Warner's father, Don Julio, who's also a shaman in this village, and everyone calls him a shaman, he took us the next morning through the jungle, through tiny little paths to a beautiful waterfall where we spent over an hour just enjoying the absolute raw nature. And I mean, this is truly unforgettable experience to walk through those tiny paths. This absolutely majestic Amazonian jungle where you feel that you're so small. My experience was that I was a smart, but a very tiny ant in the middle of that great jungle. Oh, and then there was full moon and hot springs from the real natural spring. On the way back, no one talked. We just observed the beautiful nature. And we went back to get our motorcycles from Shintuya and ride back to Salvacion. That's how it was, the trip to Shintuya. On the way back I got to drop my bike in the river too, but all went well. It was fun. Back in Salvacion, we were met by an absolute downpour for about 36 hours and had to be stuck there for 3 extra days, waiting for the roads to dry. Of course, we were constantly entertained by, Maya and 2 of her other friends who were either stealing our food or just sitting on different places of the property and screaming, and I guess they were talking in their bird language. Naughty. What are you trying to do? Buy a camera? Why? You want to try buy a camera? Why? Why do you want to do that? One of the days I did have a chance to actually walk through Salvacion, through the village, before the downpour came. It's a cute, simple little town with simple life, with little shops that actually sell everything that you possibly need there. It's a very basic living. A lot of respect for people who made their home there. I made it right back on time before the downpour began, and my bike got a nice little wash.
I didn't cover my bike. Even he doesn't want to go anywhere.
My questions why they were doing that were left unanswered.
Зачем ты это делаешь?
Well, the rains continued for about 36 hours, and when they ended, I got to look at Salvacion from above by flying a drone over it. Oh, this roughly half a mile long paved road is probably the only paved segment of this road for many, many kilometers. The road network in this whole region right now is being under construction, so a lot of large vehicles, a lot of construction work going on, and in many places you cannot even pass through a segment of the road because it is only open for vehicles and for transportation 2 hours a day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. But the road is pretty good because it's about to get paved. So here's Salvacion for you from a bird's eye view. The town actually, it's pretty small and mostly inhabited by mine workers. There are mines in the area, And there are probably 2 or 3 main streets, and in this short part of the video you'll actually see the entire town I'm flying over. Although being small, there's still a college and pretty big school for the kids of the area, although right now they're all closed because of the pandemic. But the town's got everything I guess the population needs. That is salvación for you. Actually, salvación in Spanish means salvation. You literally feel like you're saved once you get out of the jungle into this first larger town. The road back was sunny and nice, and we visited a rescue center for wild animals, where I got to see the tapir for the first time in my life. Never knew who he was. And some wild and not so wild monkeys and birds. Lolo was stubbornly trying to steal some goodies out of our little bags on the bikes. So his mommy, I guess the lady that takes care of him, had to take him away a few times so he wouldn't steal anything. Well, I guess the jungle really didn't want to let us go, so in the next village I caught a nail. I later drowned that nail in Titicaca Lake. And that's about it of our adventure down in the jungle in a national park called Manu. Bye.